The rain beat against the tall windows of Ethan's office, like it was trying to wake him. The city below blurred into gray streaks as he stared at the unfinished sketch of a woman's face, the last thing his wife ever inspired him to draw. He hadn't touched it in 2 years. The air was heavy, full of silence and dust, until the sound of a mop against tile broke it. Maria moved quietly through the hall, humming softly to herself, unaware of the ghost sitting behind that desk. When Ethan finally left for the night, his coffee cup still half full, she found the drawing, creases from his trembling hands visible across the page. Something about the sketch stopped her. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. That night, she placed a single note on his desk. "You're not broken. You're just unfinished." The words sat there under the lamplight, small but powerful. And when Ethan returned the next morning, they would change everything. The morning hum of the city seemed different that day. Ethan stood still, the note between his fingers, as if touching something sacred. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost personal. He looked around, half expecting to see someone watching him. No one. Just the low hum of machines, the smell of dust and ink. For the first time in months, he didn't open his laptop right away. He sat back, reading the words again, trying to imagine who left them and why. Hours later, Ethan found himself sketching again. His pencil moved gently, not with purpose but curiosity. Something inside him had shifted. Small, but real. The line of a roof, the curve of a window, the way light might enter a home. His mind returned to the note, to the unseen hand that wrote it. He wondered what kind of person leaves healing for a stranger. In the hallway, Maria listened to the muffled hum of his pencil scratching the paper. She smiled faintly without entering, wiping down a window that already gleamed. It wasn't her business, but something in her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, it had made a difference. That night, Ethan stayed late again, staring at the note. The office was silent, the city lights flickering outside. For the first time since Anna's death, he whispered something out loud. "Thank you." The sound broke the silence gently, like the first crack in a wall that's finally ready to fall. The next morning, Ethan placed a second cup of coffee on his desk. He told himself it was habit, but his eyes kept wandering to the doorway, to the place where the note had appeared. He worked slower, distracted by the quiet pulse of curiosity inside him. That evening, when Maria returned, she noticed the extra cup, still warm. Her fingers brushed the edge of the mug before she smiled, soft and uncertain. Something unspoken had begun between them, something fragile, like a message passed through time. For days, the pattern continued, small gestures, unseen exchanges. A note left beside a mug, a flower in a glass, a folded napkin with a sketch of sunlight breaking through clouds. Ethan never saw her face clearly, but her presence began to fill the air like quiet music. The emptiness of his office no longer felt like grief. It felt like waiting. Maria found the flower later that night. She held it close, unsure what to do with something so simple, yet so kind. She placed it beside the note she once wrote, adding a small line beneath it. "Thank you for seeing what's still beautiful." Her handwriting was the same, steady, clean, and full of care. Ethan read her reply the next morning, his heart racing like it hadn't in years. The words felt alive, as if the room itself breathed again. He wanted to thank her, to say something real, but fear held him still. Instead, he drew a simple house, a place filled with light, and left it on the desk before locking up for the night. Maria returned, finding the drawing waiting for her. She held it close to her chest, eyes glistening. In that house, she saw something she had buried long ago, the dream of a home that never came to be. For the first time in years, she whispered his name aloud, though he wasn't there to hear it. Ethan arrived earlier than usual, pretending it was for work, though he knew it wasn't. He sat by the window, sketchbook open but untouched, listening for the faint hum of the mop that meant she was nearby. When Liam walked in unannounced, Ethan quickly closed the notebook. Liam grinned, sensing something different. "You look alive again," he said. Ethan smiled faintly, Unsure how to explain that life had entered through a single note left by a stranger he'd never met. Liam leaned against the desk, glancing at the drawing spread across it. "Who's she?" he asked casually, noticing the soft pencil lines of a woman's face. Ethan froze. "No one," he said too quickly. Liam raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He simply clapped Ethan on the shoulder before leaving, the weight of his curiosity lingering in the air. That evening, Maria noticed Ethan's hesitation through the glass walls. He seemed distant again, lost in the same silence she'd first met him in. She wanted to leave another note, but stopped herself. Maybe she had gone too far. Maybe he didn't need her words anymore. Still, before she turned off the lamp, she whispered softly into the empty room. "Don't stop now." Ethan sat in the darkness, unable to shake her voice from his head. He didn't hear her, not truly, but something about the stillness carried her presence. He opened his sketchbook again, this time not to draw buildings but a person. Her. The woman he hadn't met. He drew the gentle curve of her eyes, the calm in her posture, the strength in her stillness. He didn't know her name, but for the first time he wanted to. When Liam returned the next morning, he noticed the change. Ethan's sketches had life again. Shadows, warmth, faces, whoever she is. Liam said softly, "Don't let her vanish." Ethan looked at the drawing of the woman on the desk, her features both known and unknown. Outside, the morning light flickered against the rain-streaked window, and for the first time he didn't turn away. The rain came harder that night, a relentless rhythm against the windows. Maria stood by Ethan's desk, her reflection shimmering across the glass. She hadn't meant to look, but one folder had slipped open. Inside, a headline from years ago. "Construction collapse claims 3 lives." Her breath caught. The company name beneath it was the same one her husband had worked for, the same one Ethan once led design projects for. Her knees weakened. The note she had once written to comfort him now felt like a secret burning between them. The next morning, Ethan noticed the folder moved, the paper slightly wrinkled. He frowned, tracing the old headline with his finger. That collapse had haunted him for years, a mistake buried under permits and signatures. He never thought anyone else would connect him to it. The thought of Maria discovering that truth sent a chill through him. His world, which had just begun to heal, suddenly felt fragile again. Maria didn't return that evening. The office felt emptier than before, the silence sharper. Ethan waited longer than usual, the untouched cup of coffee cooling beside him. Each tick of the clock echoed like a verdict. He knew what she must have seen and what it meant. The note she had once left. The words that saved him. Now became a mirror, showing him everything he had refused to face. At home, Maria sat on her couch, clutching the clipping she had taken by mistake. Her husband's smiling face stared back from the article's edge. She closed her eyes, remembering the day she lost him. The sirens, the dust, the long silence that followed. She had forgiven the world, or so she thought. But now the man who unknowingly caused her pain had become the one who helped her heal. Tears fell quietly, not of hate, but of heartbreak for the cruel symmetry of life. Ethan walked into the rain that night, leaving the office lights off. He didn't bother with an umbrella. The water felt cleansing, punishing. He stopped beneath the awning of the building, eyes lifted to the storming sky. Somewhere out there, Maria was piecing together the truth. He whispered her name into the wind, his voice breaking. Maybe she would hate him. Maybe she should. But even if this was the end, he was grateful for the days her kindness had given him. The following days passed in silence. Maria didn't come, and Ethan didn't sleep. The note, now creased and fading, sat untouched on his desk. He reread it over and over, the words no longer offering peace, but a question that tore at him. How do you forgive yourself when someone else paid the price? His sketches grew darker, his lines heavier. The warmth she brought had drained from the room, leaving behind the echo of something he couldn't rebuild. Liam entered quietly, the air heavy with unspoken worry. He took one look at Ethan and knew something had cracked. "You're scaring me, man," he said gently, picking up a torn sketch. Ethan didn't answer. "You can't keep living like this," Liam added, his voice breaking the quiet. But Ethan only stared at the note on his desk, the one thing that had once saved him, now reminding him of every mistake he couldn't undo. That night, Maria walked the empty streets, unable to sleep. She had tried to quit the cleaning company, but her supervisor insisted she finish the week. Each building she passed reminded her of her husband. The echoes of steel and dust, the sound of falling beams. She clutched the small folded drawing of the sunlit house Ethan had left for her. It felt cruel and comforting all at once. "He didn't know," she whispered to herself, tears mixing with the rain. The next day, Ethan entered his office to find her cleaning supplies gone. The cart, the mop, the small cloth folded neatly. Everything was missing. It hit him harder than he expected. He stood there in silence, staring at the spot where she used to stand. On his desk, only one thing remained. A single dried yellow flower, fragile and weightless. The same flower he had once left for her. He sank into his chair, the sound of rain filling the room again. That night, Ethan didn't stay at the office. He walked to the bridge where he and Anna once stood years ago, when life was still simple and the world still made sense. The wind whipped against his face as he stared into the dark water below. He pulled out the old note and read it one last time. "You're not broken, you're just unfinished." He whispered the words like a prayer, letting them drift into the night. Then, for the first time, he wept. Not for loss, but for everything he'd never allowed himself to feel. Days blurred into weeks. Ethan moved through them like a ghost, working without seeing, speaking without hearing. Then one evening, while sorting through a stack of old blueprints, something slipped free. A folded paper, soft with age and tears. His heart stopped. It was her handwriting. Maria's. He unfolded it with trembling fingers, and the scent of cleaning powder and rain seemed to rise from it. The words inside were longer this time, careful and raw. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to love again, even when the cracks still show. Ethan closed his eyes, her voice echoing in every corner of his mind. He read the letter again and again, every word carving its way into him. Maria wrote of her loss, her anger, and the strange peace she found in forgiving the world that took everything from her. She wrote that finding his drawings had reminded her that beauty could grow from ruin. "Don't build walls," she wrote. "Build something that lets the light in." Ethan felt something inside him begin to shift, slowly, painfully, but undeniably alive. He stood, the letter still in his hand, and walked to the window. The city stretched out before him, endless and glowing. He saw not buildings or glass, but stories. Every window a life, every light a chance. He thought of Maria walking through the rain, of the way she saw brokenness not as an end, but a beginning. His reflection looked back at him, softer now, more human. For the first time in years, he smiled. Later that night, Ethan returned to his desk and began to draw. Not for a client, not for money, but for healing. The lines were softer now, freer. He sketched an open courtyard surrounded by glass, where people could gather, breathe, and begin again. It wasn't just architecture. It was confession. He named it The Unfinished Place, and for the first time, it felt right. When dawn broke, Ethan stepped outside into the fresh morning air. The city was waking, streets shining from last night's rain. He carried the letter folded neatly in his pocket, close to his heart. For the first time, he wasn't running from the past. He was walking toward something new, something unfinished, and that was okay. Now, months later, the old office looked nothing like before. The sterile walls were gone. replaced with sketches pinned by hopeful hands and blueprints marked by new ideas. Ethan stood at the center, sleeves rolled, surrounded by young interns drawing what would become a community space, a place for people rebuilding their lives. He had named it the Unfinished Foundation. Yet amid the sound of pencils and laughter, one thought remained constant. He wanted her to see it. That evening, Ethan walked the nearly finished site. A wide courtyard surrounded by glass walls open to the sky. Lanterns hung along the edges, swaying gently in the evening breeze. He stopped in the middle, feeling the heartbeat of the place. Then, from the entrance came a voice he hadn't heard in months. "You built it," Maria said softly. He turned, and there she was. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world around them seemed to fade until there was only wind and memory. Then Maria stepped closer, holding something in her hand. The old note. "You kept it," she said with a faint smile. Ethan nodded, unable to find words. "So did I," she whispered, pulling her own folded paper from her pocket. 2 notes, 2 broken hearts now standing in the same place, unfinished but still standing. They sat together on the edge of the fountain in the courtyard as night deepened around them. Maria told him she had forgiven him long ago, long before she even knew his name. "You helped me remember how to see the good again," she said. Ethan listened quietly, eyes shining. "You helped me remember how to feel," he replied. The silence that followed was not heavy, but full, alive, like the pause before sunrise. When the first light of dawn broke through the glass ceiling, Ethan opened his sketchbook one last time. He drew Maria standing in the courtyard, light falling across her face, her smile soft and steady. Then he closed it gently. The world outside was waking, and so was he. For the first time since loss had found him, Ethan understood the truth. No one is ever truly finished. We just keep building piece by piece until love finds its way back home.